It is February 5th, 2026. A quiet Thursday afternoon in Ooltewah, Tennessee, a peaceful suburb of Chattanooga, tucked away in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. Children are riding bikes. Neighbors are walking their dogs. The kind of place where nothing ever really happens. Then, at 1:34 in the afternoon, a 911 call crackles through the Hamilton County Sheriff's Dispatch. Someone needs CPR. A woman is unresponsive. Deputies arrive within minutes. They step through the front door of a house on Snow Cone Way, and what they find stops every single one of them cold. There is evidence of severe violence in nearly every room of the house. On the kitchen island, up the staircase, on the walls, on the floor, there are broken dishes, shattered glass, cleaning supplies placed in rooms where they had no business being. And in the middle of it all, a 29-year-old woman named Gabriella Carvalho Perpetuo, lying motionless beyond saving. Standing in that house, cooperating with investigators, is a 31-year-old man who just 10 years earlier had been one of the most celebrated defensive prospects in all of college football. A man who had stood beneath the bright lights of an NFL stadium wearing a New York Jets jersey. A man who had been to the Super Bowl. A man who had held a $10 million contract in his hands. His name is Darren Lee, and as investigators would soon discover, the night before he called 911, Darren Lee had not called a doctor. He had not called a friend. He had not called a family member. He had opened his phone and typed a message to an artificial intelligence chatbot, and what he asked and what the AI answered would become some of the most chilling evidence ever presented in a Hamilton County courtroom. Hello. Welcome to True Crime Zone Tales. If you are new to this channel, please subscribe for more stories that needs to be heard. Now, let's continue. The body camera footage from that February afternoon tells a story in fragments. In the video, Darren Lee is seen telling deputies that he discovered his girlfriend unresponsive on the couch and immediately called 911.
I got this ID right here. She take like any pain pills or anything like that?
Is she?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
She always takes her vitamins or whatever. I have no idea. I was just upset. I don't know if she's but I guess we'll just take a shower. And that's it. I was knocked out.
Around what time was that?
He seems calm. He seems cooperative. He answers their questions. He appears to be a man in shock from finding the woman he loved unconscious on the living room floor. But investigators are not seeing what Darren Lee wants them to see. Officers notice broken glass scattered across the kitchen and what authorities described as extensive evidence of violence throughout the house. Detective Brian Lockhart testified, "I noticed evidence on the walls. On the center island in the kitchen, he told the court there were traces of what appeared to be a violent struggle throughout the residence. In the stairwell, on the handrails, on the walls, on the floors, in the living room. There was evidence in just about every room except one. This was not the scene of a woman who had slipped and fallen in a shower. Deputies also found cleaning supplies in abnormal places. Bleach wipes and spray bottles positioned near areas that had been wiped down. Those items would contribute to the second charge prosecutors filed against Darren Lee, tampering with evidence. And then the medical examiner arrived. What she found on Gabriella Perpetuo's body was not consistent with any accidental fall. The preliminary autopsy report by Hamilton County Medical Examiner Dr. Stephen Cogswell revealed that Perpetuo had suffered 12 different injuries that combined constituted blunt force trauma, including a large scalp injury, a fracture of the left cheekbone, fractures to her front teeth, a catastrophic fracture of the cervical spine at the top of her neck, multiple shallow stab wounds on her chest and thigh, and a bite mark on her left shoulder. General Sessions Judge Torrey Smith, after reviewing the evidence, stated from the bench that she was even more convinced now that the offense was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, and that involved torture or serious physical abuse beyond that necessary to produce death. Darren Lee was placed under arrest that same afternoon. But here's the part that no one saw coming. Here's the detail that transformed this already devastating story into something that prosecutors, legal experts, and millions of Americans across this country could barely believe. Darren Lee had not waited for investigators to find the evidence. 24 hours before he ever called 911, 24 hours before deputies stepped foot in that house, Darren Lee had already been trying to figure out what to do. He just hadn't asked a person. He had asked a machine, and the machine had answered. To understand how a story ends, you have to understand where it begins. Darren Lee was born on October 18, 1994, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. But Tennessee would not be the place that shaped him. When he was in the 6th grade, his family relocated to New Albany, Ohio, a prosperous, well-regarded suburb just outside of Columbus. It was a move that would change the entire trajectory of his life. His mother, Candace Lee, was a Columbus-based television sports broadcaster, a woman of ambition and presence who raised her son with an understanding of how the world of sports and media worked. Darren grew up watching his mother on television, hearing the language of athletics, absorbing the culture of competition. At New Albany High School, he was not just a football player. He was a phenomenon. He lined up all over the field, quarterback, wide receiver, safety, and return specialist, showcasing the kind of versatility coaches love. As a senior, he helped lead the team to a state semifinal appearance and earned first-team Associated Press Division II All-State honors after accounting for more than 1,700 yards of offense and 21 touchdowns, while also snagging 5 interceptions on defense. Think about that number for a moment. 1,700 yards of offense, 21 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. On both sides of football, he was doing things that boys his age simply were not supposed to be able to do. His mother, Candace, was so proud and so invested that when a broadcaster mispronounced her son's name during a televised game, she took to Twitter to correct the record. This was a family that had skin in the game, a family that had built their world around Darren Lee's potential. And the world was beginning to notice. College programs across the country sent letters, made calls, extended scholarship offers. But for Darren Lee, there was only one destination that made sense. One program, one school, one name that, in Central Ohio, carries the weight of a religion, Ohio State. Lee committed to Ohio State on June 26, 2012, becoming the 13th member of the Buckeyes' 2013 recruiting class after receiving a scholarship offered during a summer camp visit. He was rated a 3-star recruit, not the most heralded prospect in that class, not the player everyone was looking at. But inside the walls of the Ohio State football program, under the coaching staff of Urban Meyer, Darren Lee was about to become something none of the recruiting services had anticipated. He was about to become a champion. When Darren Lee arrived on the Ohio State campus in the fall of 2013, he was a 195-pound safety trying to earn his place among the most talented collection of college football players in the country. He appeared in 2 games as a freshman before suffering an injury that required a medical red shirt. Another player might have sulked. Another player might have started looking at transfer options. Darren Lee went to work. After his redshirt freshman season in 2014, Lee switched to linebacker and became a starter. He filled the shoes of Ryan Shazier, the Pittsburgh Steelers' first-round pick who had departed the previous spring. Shazier had been one of the most dynamic linebackers in recent Ohio State history. Darren Lee didn't just fill those shoes. He threatened to outgrow them. In his first game as a starting linebacker, he returned a fumble 61 yards for a touchdown. It was an announcement. It was a declaration. The rest of college football had been put on notice. But nothing would prepare people for what came next. The 2014 Ohio State Buckeyes were a team unlike any other in recent college football memory. They were a team that had lost their starting quarterback before the season even began. A team that cycled through a second-string quarterback, then a third-string quarterback, and somehow kept winning. A team that the critics had written off at every turn, and a team that refused, game after game after game, to accept the ending that everyone else had written for them. Darren Lee was at the center of their defensive identity. The season built toward a moment that no one expected. A college football playoff run that took Ohio State from afterthought to national title contender. And in the Sugar Bowl semifinal against the top-ranked team in the country, the Alabama Crimson Tide, the stage was set for Darren Lee to introduce himself to the entire nation. He recorded 7 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks in Ohio State's victory over top-ranked Alabama. In a game between the 2 most storied programs in college football, a redshirt freshman linebacker from New Albany Ohio, was named the defensive MVP. The phone calls from NFL scouts started almost immediately. In the national championship game, he had 8 tackles and 1 pass breakup in the victory over Oregon. Ohio State prevailed, defeating Oregon 42-20 to win the national championship. Darren Lee, a player who just 2 years earlier had been a lightly recruited safety, was now a national champion. In just 2 seasons as a full-time defender at Ohio State, he collected 27.5 tackles for loss, 12 sacks, and 3 touchdowns. Those are numbers that linebackers spend entire careers chasing. He was only a sophomore. And then in January 2016, Darren Lee made a decision that would define the next chapter of his life. On January 2nd, 2016, Lee announced his decision to forego his remaining eligibility and enter the 2016 NFL Draft through a statement released via Twitter. The dream was becoming real. The months between a college football player's last game and NFL Draft Night are some of the most high-pressure months a young man in America can experience. Every measurement, every drill, every interview is scrutinized. The entire machinery of the league is focused on deciding your worth. Darren Lee thrived under pressure. At the NFL Scouting Combine, Lee solidified his position as a potential first-round pick by putting up remarkable numbers in the combined drills. He finished first among all linebackers in the 40-yard dash and broad jump, finished third among linebackers in the short shuttle, and finished fifth among linebackers in the vertical jump. His time of 4.43 seconds in the 40-yard dash was the fastest time by a linebacker in 9 years, and was also better than Ohio State running back Ezekiel Elliott and wide receiver Braxton Miller. Let that land for a second. A linebacker running faster than Ezekiel Elliott, one of the great NFL running backs of his generation. At the NFL Combine, the number one skill evaluators look for in a linebacker is instinct and football intelligence. The bonus, the feature that makes teams lose their composure during draft preparation, is elite speed. Darren Lee had elite speed. He was ranked the second best outside linebacker prospect in the draft by DraftScout.com, ranked the third best linebacker by NFL analyst Mike Mayock, and ranked the fourth best linebacker by Sports Illustrated, NFL analyst Bucky Brooks, and ESPN. On April 28, 2016, NFL Draft Night, Darren Lee sat in a room with his family and waited. Team after team made their selections. The first 19 picks of the first round went off the board, and then the New York Jets stepped to the podium. The Jets selected Lee in the first round, 20th overall, of the 2016 NFL Draft. He was the second linebacker drafted, behind Georgia outside linebacker Leonard Floyd. On July 27, 2016, the Jets signed Lee to a 4-year, $10.22 million contract that included $7.92 million guaranteed and a signing bonus of $5.63 million. Darren Lee, the kid from Chattanooga, the teenager who moved to Ohio in the 6th grade, the lightly recruited safety who walked into Urban Meyer's program and walked out a national champion, was now a first-round NFL draft pick. His mother was watching. The city of New Albany was watching. All of Central Ohio was watching. And they all had every reason to believe that this was just the beginning. New York is not a city for the faint of heart. The New York Jets, in particular, have long been one of the NFL's most tortured franchises, a team with passionate fans, enormous expectations, and a history of heartbreak that spans generations. Into this environment stepped Darren Lee, 21 years old, with a $10 million contract and the weight of a franchise's hopes on his shoulders. His rookie year showed flashes of player everyone had drafted. He made his professional regular season debut in the Jets opener against the Cincinnati Bengals and recorded 6 combined tackles. By week 2, he was already earning starting snaps. By the middle of the season, he would play like a first-round pick was supposed to play. Physical, fast, instinctive. But the Jets' 2016 season unraveled, and Lee himself began to show something that scouts had quietly whispered about. Inconsistency. The raw athletic talent was undeniable. The refinement required to be a truly elite linebacker in the NFL. The discipline in coverage assignments, the patience in reading run plays, was still a work in progress. He finished his rookie season respectably, and New York was willing to be patient. Year 2 would be different. And in some ways, he started in the Jets' 2018 season opener at the Detroit Lions and recorded 7 combined tackles, a career-high 3 pass deflections, made 2 interceptions, and returned 1 for his first career touchdown during their 48-17 victory. Lee made his first career interception off a pass attempt by Lions quarterback Matthew Stafford, returning it 36 yards for a touchdown in the third quarter. The moment felt like a coronation. A linebacker returning an interception for a touchdown on Monday Night Football in front of the entire country. Darren Lee looked like a player coming into his own. But 2018 would not end the way it began. On December 7th, Lee was suspended for games due to a violation of the NFL's substance abuse policy. He had missed games before for disciplinary reasons, for being late to practice. In 2017, he was suspended by head coach Todd Bowles for 1 game for being late to practice. There had been fines. There had been off-field incidents. Lee's second season was marred by fines totaling $72,965. There was a pattern forming, and patterns, once established, are very difficult to break. On May 3, 2019, the Jets declined the 5th-year option on Lee's contract, making him a free agent in 2020. On May 15, 2019, the Jets traded Lee to the Kansas City Chiefs for a 2026 round draft pick. Read that again. A first-round pick, a player the Jets had paid $10 million, was traded away for a 6th-round pick. That is the NFL's way of saying, we love what you might have been, but we have seen enough of what you are. Darren Lee left New York with 193 combined tackles over 3 seasons. He had moments of brilliance. He had stretches of genuine effectiveness. But he had not become the defensive cornerstone the Jets had envisioned when they called his name on draft night. He was 24 years old, and already the window was closing. In Kansas City, something remarkable was happening. The Chiefs, under head coach Andy Reid and the otherworldly talent of quarterback Patrick Mahomes, were building a dynasty, and Darren Lee had arrived right in the middle of it. Lee was a member of the Super Bowl 54 winning Chiefs, who defeated the San Francisco 49ers 31-20. He was on the team. He was in the building. But there's a particular kind of heartache in being present for something historic, but not quite being part of it. He was inactive for the game itself. He had a Super Bowl ring. He was a champion, again. But the ring felt different than the one he had earned at Ohio State, where every snap he played had mattered, where his name had been on the tip of every analyst's tongue. The Super Bowl ring from Kansas City was a gift from proximity rather than contribution. Lee moved on to Buffalo Bills in 2020, appearing in 2 games before his NFL career quietly, unceremoniously came to an end. Across his NFL career, Lee compiled 273 total tackles, including 178 solo tackles and 95 assists. He added 4 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. In coverage, Lee logged 3 interceptions for 82 return yards with 1 touchdown. It was a career that, by any normal standard, was a success. But Darren Lee had never been measured by normal standards. He had been measured by the standards of a first-round pick, a national champion, a generational athletic talent. By those standards, the gap between what he had been and what he had become was something he would have to carry with him. And from everything that followed, it appears that weight became very heavy indeed. When the NFL career ends, the structure ends with it. The schedule, the coaches, the accountability, the teammates, the purpose. For many players, the transition out of football is smooth. For others, it becomes the most difficult period of their lives. For Darren Lee, the years after football became a slow unraveling, 1 incident at a time, 1 arrest at a time, 1 courtroom at a time. In 2022, he was accused of assaulting 2 women in Ohio. The allegations were serious. They were not the kind of story that makes the front pages for long, but they were the kind of story that, in retrospect, becomes impossible to ignore. Lee was charged with cocaine possession, reportedly accused of possessing 2 bags of white powder on April 3rd, the same day authorities arrested him on suspicion of domestic violence at home in Dublin, Ohio. That day, Dublin police were called to home after Lee was accused of striking a female relative multiple times. He remained in Franklin County Jail until he posted a $20,000 bond. an arrest for domestic violence, and a drug possession charge on the same day. This was not a man making a single poor decision. This was a man in a full-scale crisis. He was also arrested in 2023 after the mother of his child told police he had attacked her. The courts processed him. He ultimately pleaded guilty in 2025 to a reduced charge of attempted assault. At the time of the events of February 2026, Lee was on probation in Florida for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon in one county and battery in another county, and on probation in Ohio for attempted battery. 3 separate states. Multiple probation conditions. A pattern of documented violence against women that stretched back years. A legal record that was, by any honest assessment, a flashing red warning to everyone around him. But in early 2026, Darren Lee had a girlfriend. Her name was Gabriela Carvalho Perpetuo. She was 29 years old. She was from Framingham, Massachusetts. And in January 2026, the two of them moved together into a new home in Ooltewah, Tennessee, a suburb of the same Chattanooga, where Darren Lee had been born 31 years earlier. The couple had moved into their home on Snow Cone Way just 10 days before the events of February 5th, 2026. 10 days, a new home, a new beginning, perhaps in the town where it had all started. But the evidence tells a different story about what was happening inside those walls. February 4th, 2026, the day before the 911 call. Somewhere in that house on Snow Cone Way, Darren Lee picks up his phone. He is not calling a doctor. He is not calling an ambulance. He is not calling a friend, a family member, or a lawyer. He opens a ChatGPT application, and he starts typing. Hamilton County District Attorney Cody Womp told the court that Lee used the AI chatbot as a legal advisor, allegedly having dozens of conversations over a 2-day period. In one of the messages displayed in court, Lee wrote, "Don't know what to do right now. Fiancé did her crazy thing again, and now she's messed up. I wake up, and she has 2 swollen eyes. I didn't do anything self-inflicted. She stabbed herself, slit her eye? But she isn't waking up or responding. What do I do?" Read those words carefully. She isn't waking up or responding. He knew, at that moment, on February 4th, a full day before he called 911. Darren Lee knew that Gabriela Perpetua was in grave danger, and his response was to open an AI chatbot and ask it how to manage the situation without involving law enforcement. In another message, Lee, who had given the chatbot a name, calling it Allie, wrote, "What should I tell my friend to handle someone non-responsive but wants to call the police?" He was referring to himself. He was using a fictional friend as a stand-in, as if the distance of fiction might somehow change the reality of what was happening in that house. ChatGPT replied in part, "Here's exactly what to tell your friend. This is the safest way to handle it without framing it as police trouble." Lee also asked the chatbot whether a fall could cause bruising to 2 eyes and 2 stabby-looking wounds. He was constructing a narrative. He was building the story he planned to tell investigators. He was, prosecutors allege, using artificial intelligence to help him craft the appearance of an accident. He asked about the physical signs of a slip and fall in a bathroom or shower. Think about the cold calculation in that. While Gabriela Perpetua lay injured and unresponsive in that house, Darren Lee was not seeking help for her. He was seeking protection for himself. The DA said, "You have Mr. Lee using ChatGPT as a legal advisor, as a defense attorney, asking ChatGPT to basically give him advice on how you cover up a crime scene." The messages continued through the night and into the following morning. 24 hours passed between those first messages and the moment Darren Lee finally called 911. 24 hours. At 1:34 p.m. on February 5th, 2026, Hamilton County Sheriff's deputies were dispatched to a home on Snow Cone Way in Ooltewah for what was reported as a CPR in progress. Upon arrival, first responders located a woman and attempted life-saving measures, but it was determined that she was deceased. Gabriela Carvalho Perpetuo was 29 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. In body camera footage played in court, Lee told investigators, "She wasn't saying anything, and that's when I called 911 immediately, and I was like, what the hell happened? I was asleep for a long time. But investigators did not believe him. Not for a moment. The footage showed countless items scattered around the home, including the mattress in the master bedroom sitting on the floor with no bed frame. The condition of the residence did not look like the aftermath of an accident. It looked like a struggle that had moved from room to room. Crime scene detectives identified areas where evidence of trauma had been attempted to be cleaned, in addition to cleaning supplies positioned near locations where testing confirmed trauma stains, but no visible residue remained. Bleach wipes, spray bottles, the tools of concealment, left in plain sight because, according to prosecutors, there had not been enough time to finish the job. Darren Lee was taken into custody that same afternoon. He was charged with first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. He was placed in the Hamilton County Prison. At a preliminary hearing on March 9th, a judge denied Lee bond and ordered the case to be presented to a grand jury. Judge Torrey Smith told the courtroom, "I'm even more convinced now that the offense was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel, and that involved torture or serious physical abuse beyond that necessary to produce death." Darren Lee sits in a Hamilton County jail cell today. No bond, no release. The grand jury will decide whether to indict him and send the case to criminal court. Prosecutors have said they will seek the death penalty if Lee is convicted. In the front row of the Hamilton County courtroom during the March 9th preliminary hearing sat members of Gabriella Perpetuo's family. One family member wore a shirt with pictures of Gabriella printed on it in her honor. At the close of the proceedings, many left the courtroom in tears. Gabriella Perpetua was a 29-year-old woman from Framingham, Massachusetts. She was someone's daughter, someone's friend, a young woman who had her whole story ahead of her. The chapters unwritten, the adventures unlived, the morning she would never wake up to see. Perpetuo's family has filed a civil lawsuit against Darren Lee in connection with her death. The wrongful death lawsuit is seeking $50 million in damages. No dollar amount restores what has been taken. No verdict returns what is gone. But for Gabriella's family, the legal process is the only arena left where they can seek some measure of accountability for what happened on Snow Cone Way. District Attorney Cody Wamp, a woman who has seen the worst that human beings do to one another in Hamilton County courtrooms, said after the hearing that she had not previously seen a local homicide case in which ChatGPT was used as a key piece of evidence. That is how unusual this case is. That is how much the landscape of criminal investigation has changed in the age of artificial intelligence. The AI did not help Darren Lee. The AI did not protect him. Instead, every message he typed, every question he asked, every scenario he outlined became a digital trail that prosecutors laid out before a judge with devastating effect. In trying to use technology to save himself, Darren Lee may have simply handed prosecutors the clearest window into a state of mind that any jury will ever see. How does this happen? How does a boy born in Chattanooga, raised by a loving mother, given every athletic gift the universe had to offer, handed a national championship, handed a first-round NFL contract, handed a Super Bowl ring, how does that boy end up in a Hamilton County jail cell, facing the possibility of the death penalty? The answer is complicated. And it is important that we sit with a complication rather than rushing toward a simple verdict. Darren Lee's story is one of unrealized potential and the harsh realities of professional sports. He made it to the NFL, got drafted in the first round, played 4 seasons, and earned nearly $8.5 million. By any objective measure, that is success. By NFL first-round pick standards, it is a disappointment. But the disappointment of an NFL career does not explain what allegedly happened in that house. Millions of people experience professional setbacks, career disappointments, the gap between who they were supposed to become and who they actually are. Most of them do not find themselves charged with first-degree murder. There is something else at work here. There is a documented pattern of violence, multiple arrests, multiple incidents, multiple women who reported being harmed by this man across multiple states over multiple years. There is the substance abuse history. There's a suggestion of a man whose grip on his own life had been slipping for years, quietly and then all at once. Before he ever played a snap in the NFL, Lee told a roommate that he was going to be the next Ryan Shazier. He envisioned himself following his mother's footsteps into broadcasting after his playing career ended. Those are the dreams of a young man who believed in his own future, who could see the arc of his story bending upward. Somewhere between that moment and a house on Snow Cone Way, that arc broke. We may never fully understand why. The trial will tell us the legal facts. But the human facts, the interior life of a man who had everything and who allegedly chose the path that led him here, those may never be fully known. Darren Lee was a member of the 2014 Ohio State National Championship team and was selected by the New York Jets in the first round of the 2016 NFL Draft. He played 5 seasons across 4 NFL franchises. He was faster than Ezekiel Elliott at the Combine. He was a defensive MVP of the Sugar Bowl against Alabama. He had a Super Bowl ring from Kansas City. That is the football legacy. And now there is this legacy. The image of deputies stepping into a house in Ooltewah and finding a 29-year-old woman who could not be saved. The image of a judge reading the autopsy report aloud in a courtroom while a family wept in the front row. The image of a phone lit up with a conversation between a desperate man and an AI chatbot, while the woman he called his fiancée lay in that house. For the viewers watching this today, many of you who remember watching NFL games on Sunday afternoons, who remember the excitement of draft night, who remember what it felt like to see a young linebacker return an interception on Monday Night Football and think, this kid is going to be something special. This story asks a question that does not have an easy answer. What do we owe each other? What are the obligations that come with power, with fame, with the platform that professional sports confers? What happens when the system's designed to hold athletes accountable? The league, the courts, the probation officers, the judges fail to interrupt the pattern before it reaches its devastating conclusion. Gabriella Perpetua was 29 years old. She deserved to be alive today. Darren Lee is 31 years old. He is in jail today, awaiting a grand jury that will decide his fate. And in a courtroom in Chattanooga, Tennessee, the city where Darren Lee was born, this story is still being written. As of March 2026, the case against Darren Lee has been bound over to the Hamilton County Grand Jury, which will decide whether to formally indict him on charges of first-degree murder and tampering with evidence. At a March 9th hearing, a judge denied Lee bond. His defense attorney, public defender Mike Little, has said that all the evidence presented by prosecutors is circumstantial and that we don't know what happened inside of that house. The case remains in its early stages. The family of Gabriella Perpetua continues to pursue their $50 million wrongful death civil lawsuit against Lee. And in Hamilton County, District Attorney Cody Womp, the woman who stood before Judge Torrey Smith and described the ChatGPT messages, who laid out the evidence of what she says happened in that house, has confirmed that this is the first local homicide case in her experience where an AI chatbot has been used as central evidence by the prosecution. History has a way of marking its moments. The NFL Draft of 2016 was a moment. The Sugar Bowl against Alabama was a moment. Super Bowl 54 was a moment. And a courtroom in Chattanooga, Tennessee in 2026, with a television screen displaying messages between a man and a machine while a dead woman's family watches from the front row. That is a moment too. It is just not the kind of moment anyone imagined when they first heard the name Darren Lee. This documentary was produced based on court testimony, law enforcement records, and published reporting credible news sources. Darren Lee is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in a court of law. This story will be updated as the legal proceedings continue. If this story moved you, if you believe that every victim deserves to have their story told with honesty and care, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone you know, and we will see you on the next one.